ISO FileMaker Magazine, the professional's resource for FileMaker know-how. Well, hello there, and welcome back to yet another FileMaker tutorial video where we are learning more about FileMaker Pro. My name is Matt Petrowski, bringing you these tutorials over at my website, FileMakerMagazine.com. In this video tutorial, we're taking a look at the topic of FMPerception. This is a review of the product that is a blazing fast inspection tool for FileMaker solutions. In fact, I don't even know if I can contain my excitement on this video. This tool is so awesome. Let's take a look at what I'm talking about. All right. To start things off, if you're not already aware of its release, FMPerception is a new solution analysis tool. It's being provided by Geist Interactive, and it's actually created by a developer of a few other tools that, if you don't know, I'm already very fond of. That is the FM X-ray specs, and there's a table view, but this tool tops them both. The FM X-ray specs, still a very valid tool, but it's being offered through Geist Interactive, created by Dave Ramsey, or James David Ramsey. This tool is absolutely brilliant. Now, unfortunately, currently, as of the recording of this video, it is a Mac-only tool, but I do know that the Windows tool will probably be coming pretty quick, but what you get in the Mac tool is going to be equivalently available in the Windows tool when it is made available. Because I develop on the Mac, I'm going to be able to show you everything that's going on. Now, of course, you can go to, I believe, FMPerception.com, and what will happen is that will redirect to this URL over at geistinteractive.com/products, FMPerception-fast-FileMaker-analysis. A little bit of a long URL there, but if you just put in FMPerception.com, I believe that domain will redirect to this particular page so that you can look at all of the information. Now, of course, they're going to have some introductory videos. In fact, Todd has done a stellar job of documenting all of what the tool has to offer. And there's a number of areas that everywhere where you see these little click to plays, you can get these little videos. So rather than me rehashing what Todd covers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I personally use the tool. Here's your pricing actually down here. We'll get that out of the way right off the bat. I don't know if there is going to be any type of special pricing through the membership of ISO FileMaker Magazine. I'll have to ask for that, and maybe that'll be at the end of the video. But as of the recording of this video, here is our pricing. For a one-user usage right here, $499 or basically $500 is what you're going to be paying. But if you do a lot of FileMaker development work, that $500 will be so well worth it that it shouldn't even factor in, just because the tool is so fast. Now, the comparable tools, which I believe we have Inspector and then Base Elements, you sort of have to think of those two tools as a little bit different than what FMPerception is. FMPerception is basically a tool that will tell you what you want to know as you ask the question, whereas the other tools are basically, we're going to find the answers to everything so that you can just search a FileMaker database and then look for whatever the answer is. FMPerception basically loads in the DDR and then parses it as you ask the questions that you ask about it through the user interface. Now, we're going to get into the user interface, but again, you're going to be able to watch Todd's videos here on the website. I'm going to go through how I actually use the tool. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can generate a DDR, and how you generate that DDR really is going to be a matter of your workflow. So let's take a look at the process that I go through and see how easy it can be to use this powerful tool. All right, so here's what I have on screen. I've shot a video about this previously. I have a database that I created called FM Recipes. It's an article that you can search on the magazine website, and it's basically a FileMaker database that contains snippets of commonly used things that I basically use in a lot of my FileMaker projects. Now, over here on the side, this sidebar, this is just basically a project launcher tool where I can just launch different projects, and that's what launched this FM Recipes. Now, if I was to take this scenario, I want to use FM Recipes and I want to find out information about it. Either one, because I've forgotten what I personally developed in the solution, even though I'm intimately familiar with the database itself, or two, I'm getting access to a database that somebody else developed that I have no idea what's going on. And if you've ever come across that situation, you know that digging things out can be basically a rat's maze of pulling out spaghetti strings to find out what points to what and where to where. This is where FMPerception is so quick and so cool. So I'm going to switch over to FMPerception, and as we see, FMPerception opens up with basically just a request. It wants to know where is the summary XML file of the DDR that you output, and it wants to be able to open that so that it can parse it and show you all of the individual things or give you the answers to the questions that you might have about this FileMaker solution. So since we can't start with the FMPerception tool, we need to start with an actual DDR. As I mentioned, there are multiple ways to generate this DDR. You of course have to have FileMaker Pro Advanced, but how you generate the DDR is really going to be up to you. There's one manual process and a couple of automated processes, and we'll take a look at those as a result of this video. Now, of course, if you didn't already know, in order to actually generate a database design report from FileMaker, you'll have to have FileMaker Pro Advanced, and so you cannot do this without FileMaker Pro Advanced. Therefore, if you're just using FileMaker Pro, you will have to get a copy of FileMaker Advanced. Now up here under the Tools menu, that's where we're actually going to see all of the options that we have that relate to the FMPerception tool. And that is this one right here, the Database Design Report. Now you can see that I have assigned a key to this, and I did this through the Macintosh system preference of the keyboard. Within the keyboard, you will find an option within one of the tabs where you can actually set a key to any given menu name. And so I have a key of F4 set to the Database Design Report. And so that's our manual process in order to generate this. Now I can hit my F4 right now, which will bring it up. And this is where you actually get to choose the databases that you want to choose and then what you want to include. By default, everything is selected. The most important thing we're interested in whenever we're dealing with a tool that's going to process the data is this switch right here. We need to set things to XML. HTML is going to allow us to open the database design report in a browser and be able to use the browser's search functionality and look for that type of stuff, but we need XML because that's the machine language that the FMPerception tool is going to be able to use. Now, obviously, if we're going to do XML and it's machine language, we really don't want to try to make sense of things, so we are going to uncheck Automatically Open Report when done. Once we create that, it's going to prompt us for where we want to store this. So here on my desktop, I'm going to store this within a folder called DDR, and I'll click Save. It's going to be really fast because this is a very small file. If you have a very large file, then you want to make sure and probably generate that DDR from a local copy of the database. You can see right now that actually my database is currently being hosted by my server named ISODev. Any file that is hosted where the title of the window is not renamed by part of the script will have the server name within parentheses if you didn't already know that. So when your solution is hosted, if it's a very large solution, it will take a longer time to generate your DDR. If you're willing to leave it on the server and not bring it down because you're not impatient, you're willing to get up, walk away, have that coffee, then that's just fine to do. You can generate the DDR while the database is hosted, or if it's local. If it's local, generating the DDR is going to be much quicker. Now what happens is in the DDR, just for your insight, if you don't already know, is there will be a unique file generated, an XML file for each of the FileMaker files in a whole solution. So if it's a solution that includes multiple files with external references amongst them, then it will generate one for each file. The primary file that we're interested in is this summary. Summary.xml is actually going to be a pointer to all of the individual files that are included within the whole of the solution. In this case, I only have one file that's actually created. Now that's the manual way of generating it. That's using FileMaker and going up to the database design report. But if you want to do things automatically, there are a number of ways to do it. One is through a plugin, which is provided by MBS, and another is provided by Apple Scripting, which obviously is only going to be available on Macintosh and not on Windows, whereas the MBS is probably available on both Windows and Macintosh. My preferred method is MBS just because it is so convenient. Now the trick is the MBS has a function that you can call that actually just replicates what you do in the user interface. It goes up to the tools, choose database design report, selects XML, unchecks automatic, and then clicks create and puts it into a location that you specify as part of the function. I'll show you how easy this is because I have this right here within my FM recipes. For any solution that I'm working with, all I do is I just copy to clipboard this one object, go into layout mode, click and paste, and then I can put that object somewhere on the user interface. Now, right now we've got a really light font there. Let me change it to a darker color, and let's actually give the button a little bit of a fill. Now, it turns out that my button here, it was taken from one of Todd's examples, and I'll make it just a blue one. Well, we can make it the text white there again. We'll go back into browse mode. So I wanted to make it so that I could have this button anywhere on any solution. If you give me a solution, or if I create a new solution, or I open a FileMaker starter solution, I can now just paste this button. There are no scripts, there's nothing. It is just the one button, and the one button includes all the code required in order to generate a DDR. So watch what happens when I click this button. I'll click Generate DDR, and you can see that everything was just automatic right there. Now, on my desktop, I have a folder called DDR. That DDR folder is a main container for all of my sub output. So you can see right here, FM recipes as a subfolder was created because the name of the file is FM recipes. On top of that, if I wanted a time-stamped differing collection of summaries, then I'd be able to hold down the Option key. I put that into the code here. If I hold down the Option key, it will automatically create that report for me. And you can see in this particular instance, it actually added a timestamp onto the folder itself. This would allow me to do a comparison. If I do any type of changes in this file now, let's say I add a new script and I delete a couple scripts, remove a couple of layouts, I can hold down the Option key or the Alt key, click Generate DDR, and it will generate that DDR for me. The one thing you need to remember with this automated method, when I'm using this MBS plugin, a completely separate plugin from the FMPerception tool, I am actually generating this DDR, and it's generating it based on all files that are currently open. So if I had another file open in FileMaker right now, it would generate the DDR for all of the open files. I really don't know that I can control that. And it basically, you just want to have one file open. But you can see that I have the two different time-stamped versions, and I can actually make changes. So now that I've showed you how I actually use this, and I'm going to mention that on the website, the alternative, the AppleScript method, which was originally created by John Renfrew and is now being provided by Todd Geist over at the FMPerception website, it uses an automator or an AppleScript solution that within the application menu, within the services menu, you will actually be able to find within the services a little option right here, which you can then again assign a keyboard shortcut, which allows you to simply just output the DDR by using a keyboard shortcut. You'd just be able to shortcut it, the DDR gets pushed out. The cool thing here is I'm working on this solution, and I want to find out information about this solution, but then I go in and I make some changes to the solution, and I want to find out what has been removed, maybe from a to-do list, or what scripts have been modified. If I don't hold down the Option key and just click Generate DDR, it's going to generate this, and it should replace it right on top of it. In fact, if it didn't, I simply go over here, delete it, and generate it again. Generate it anew. With the DDR generated, we can now take a look at the actual DDR, the FMPerception tool. This is where we're going to get into being able to see all of the things about our database, and this is where I hope you're going to see how exciting this actually is, because it doesn't matter whether you have a solution that is a small solution like this one file, or a multi-file solution that is many megabytes that generates a very significantly sized DDR, meaning these files may get up into the hundreds of megabytes. And you may have multiples of them FMPerception is going to load those extremely fast, hence its name, FMPerception. As fast as you can perceive it, you're going to be able to find out information about your solution. Let's take a look and open this DDR and take a look at how fast things are. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, the FMPerception tool needs the DDR, and as I switch over to it, of course, so you're just going to be able to do Command or Control-N on the Windows version when that one's available, and you're basically just going to select the summary. When you select the summary, that's going to read in the metadata of all these other files that it actually needs to parse. So what we're going to see is as I open this up, and again, the FMPerception tool does not pre-process the XML files or all of the individual files. That's in comparison to the other tools, the other analysis tools, where if you need more of a long-term storage of those analyses, then maybe loading them into a FileMaker database is an actual good idea. In this case, FMPerception tool is about asking questions about your solution. So you can see right here what it does is it loads in the database. Now, each time that I'm making a click on all of these different areas, that is when FMPerception is actually parsing out the information that's stored within this file. Now, granted, because this file is only 5.8 megabytes, that's extremely small. But again, if it was hundreds of megabytes, each time that you click, what happens is it's going to parse out that information specific to what you are looking for. So from the standpoint of FMPerception, you're simply asking questions. And those questions come in the form of, how many places is this script used? How many places is this global variable used? Can I actually search throughout all of the DDR for just a plain piece of text? All of those questions can be answered. Now you can see right here that we've got the ability to see our scripts in their groupings, or we're able to see things from the standpoint of flat. If we click on flat, you can see how quickly that actually ripped through the data. That's 5.8 megabytes though, so it's extremely small, but I can select on any of the scripts in this whole solution. And when I select on them, let's say for example, the script parameters, I can actually take a look as I drill down in this browser area, all of the different things that are specific about this particular item that I've selected. So I've selected on this script parameters script. It will load items down here at the bottom, which are basically going to look the exact same until we select on something that's a little bit more specific. In this case, we've got no references. Actually, we need a much more complex script. Let me see if I've got one here. Show editor, calls. I probably picked one of the most basic databases you could ever pick in order to show as an example. There we go. There's at least something right there on get clipboard. This is a very simplistic solution, by the way. But when you load this, and I highly suggest you go get a copy of the trial and use this on your own solution, you'll be impressed with how fast it is. So here what we have on scripts is I can take a look at this and I can see what are the steps in this script. It's going to give me all of the steps. When I select on an individual step over here in our details area, which is on the side, we're able to see more information. For example, any of the calculation code and all of the metadata and all of the hierarchy. For example, the file is FM recipes. It's within scripts. It's within the user interface group of scripts, within a layouts group within the user interface group. And the script is called get clipboard. And we're looking at this step right here. So not only can you see all of the individual steps and information, but you can see how many calls are to that script or how many calls that script makes, what that script is called by, fields that are referenced, all elements that are referenced, pretty much everything that you can get when you look at the HTML version of the DDR. But here we have a lot more power. When I select on any of these areas right within this category, or actually within any of the columns within this browser section, this is what they're calling the column browser section. And there is another way to view this data, by the way. When I make a selection in any one of these, it puts that selection or the results from that selection down into the bottom. So down here, we can see a list of all of my items. We can see that I have 44 items right here. It also tells you this information up at the top within the header area of what you have selected. So we can see right there, we have selected scripts flat and we've got 44 elements. So we're able to see very quickly what's going on. What's nice is all of the internal information is also revealed to us. So if you like to do any development based on internal IDs, like I do, especially with layouts, having these internal IDs right here listed for you in a separate application is really pretty nice because you can toggle and switch back over to FileMaker, back to FMPerception, and you're going back and forth and you're able to reference this information just right off the bat. Now this results section down in the bottom, as I was getting to, can be searched. So not only can I filter out the information specific to what I'm looking for, but we're going to see that there is a way that you can actually do a text search on all of this content very easily across multiple files or within an individual file as it is. Now, the first thing to pay attention to is that this is a fully customizable environment. You can make this look and work however you like to work based on the types of questions that you like to ask about your database. For example, if I want calls to scripts over here, because I want to be able to sort on it and see all of the calls to scripts up at the top, I can sort that really quickly and see these are all of the scripts that have calls to other scripts. So if I look at this particular item, it's going to give me my details over here. But what's important to note is that within a lot of the areas, you can simply double click and double clicking will drill down on that area. So if I wanted to see this get snippet field, double clicking will actually make that selection up in the browser section and then allow me to see all of the metadata about that particular item. And of course, in order to go back, all I have to do is go back up the hierarchy. So I was looking at scripts flap, and there I am back in my original view. Now, the cool thing about FMPerception is that as you parse things, for as long as this window is open, it is building a constant cache. It's a cache of things that once it has parsed that data, it doesn't need to do it again. Remember when I mentioned that you make a selection on any one of these items, and it's when you select that FMPerception is actually extracting that data out of those individual files. Well, it is caching that as we go along. So for example, the very first time on a complex solution or complex DDR, if I have a ton of layouts, the very first time I click on layouts flat, it may take a little while to actually parse that, but once it's parsed, it's then cached, and as long as this window is open, every time I click on that, it's going to be extremely fast. It's basically just like click, 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 and the data is just there immediately for you. So everything that I've done in terms of all these clicks, granted I'm dealing with a very lightweight file, it has all been loaded into a cache, into memory, and it's extremely fast now. So if I need information about layouts, I just click on them right away, and then I'm able to see whatever it is that I want to see. So let's get to the exciting part of the fact that we are able to search through all of this content. On all of the items, or on all of the files, there's this one item down at the bottom that is a text search, meaning you can directly search for anything that you want to find within the whole of your solution. So as a developer, if you are using FileMaker's notes, for example, and you're using those notes to leave yourself reminders, or you're working within a team environment and you're saying, Matt modified this, or Jim did this, or on this date, or if you use specific keywords, you're able to search for that content using this search field right here. So right now I'm selected on a particular file. I could also be selected in a multi-file solution on all files. There would be an entry within this column that allows you to search across all of the multiple files using this one search feature. So I don't really know if there's anything, let's find let, for example, right here, because let is obviously going to be a very common thing. When I do that search, notice that I get all of the different types of objects that include the actual word let. I get steps, I get functions, I get text objects, I get references, I get timestamps or date fields. This is basically telling me everywhere where that let is going to filter out. So let's put in something a little less specific, put in developer right there. And now let's see if we can put in field. And look at that. We can find all of my fields that include the word developer. Now, of course, for me, developer is a custom function. Let's go about this the reverse way. I have a custom function called developer. If I simply select on the custom function, select on the developer, and then look at the references, it's going to tell me everywhere where that particular custom function is used. It's used in this popover button. I can look at the layout object hierarchy. I can look at the sub-elements of that button. It really is pretty mind-boggling how deep you can actually go in order to find things. But I can see that it's used within these steps. I can see that it's called within the debug. This is a great way to actually set up and document your dependencies. Now, in this case, you can see that my custom function, here all the FileMaker code, tells me that it references or has a dependency on the developer custom function. I'm a pretty good documenter in a lot of my solutions, but if you are not and you need to find those dependencies, the FMPerception tool is going to be a great way to do that. So let's go over a little bit more about what the tool offers. I really don't think that I need to tell you that anything that's in the DDR, if you've ever worked with a DDR, is exposed within FMPerception. So if you know that you can access information about global variables, relationships, table occurrences, accounts, privilege sets, everything that you're familiar with when you're dealing with FileMaker, then you can pretty much drill down. That's going to be something that you're going to be able to figure out on your own. It's using the tool itself and making it as valuable as you can that's going to be the most important to you. Now, many times when you're dealing with a very large FileMaker solution, it is a little bit of a pain and takes a bit of time in order to export the DDR, completely pre-process that, and then import it into another tool. That really should not even be a consideration when it comes to FMPerception, because getting information about any of the modifications that you make is really pretty cool. So for example, I can go through this process, scroll to the bottom, do a text search, and look at something like to do. Now in a lot of development, they'll do @to do as an example, and I don't currently have any @to do's in here. No problem, I'm switching over to my FileMaker solution, bringing up the scripts, and let's go on the changelog, or let's do the docs right here. Let's just add a @to do item. So I would put in a script and I would say @to do, change this script to something. So there we go. I've saved that and I've made a modification to my database. Now, as I stated, you want to get this DDR out pretty quickly in order to be able to look at new information. Well, I'm just going to delete this, go over, click the DDR, which is going to output, and all I have to do is over in this solution. Remember, I've already searched for @to do. Is up here under the menu, we've got a refresh option. And this refresh, which is assigned to Command R, without having closed the window, is going to allow me to simply just refresh the solution. And I can now, without anything having changed, I didn't change the search, nothing was wiped out, it instantly finds this new change. So let's do something else with this process, being that it's so fast. Let's say, for example, I'm adding new things. I'm going to hold down the Option key on this one. Let's see, I've got the 2 right here. I'll delete this, get rid of those, and I'm going to hold down Option. And it's going to output my DDR at 1304.45. And I'm going to go in, I'm going to make some changes to my solution. Let's say I'm going to add a new table occurrence right there. I won't add a new field. I'll go ahead and say OK. Let's go ahead and modify and make a new script. Go into the scripts and let's actually modify my script, get rid of the to-do item, and go to the docs and changelog. Let's add a new item there. And it is a note. So I've made some changes here. Actually, I needed to put that. There we go, new note. I've made some changes into my solution. And I want to be able to see what those changes are. I'm going to hold down the Option key again, generate my DDR, which I now have 2 of these DDRs. I have one from a minute ago and now with all of my changes. Here is another feature that the FMPerception tool provides. It has a diffing functionality built in. You can see right here that we've got a new diff processor. If we bring this up, we're now going to be able to look at a before and after snapshot of the 2 different DDRs. So I'm going to choose this one, and the first one we'll take a look at is the one from 445. And we'll load that. Then we will choose the other one, which was just a few minutes later. And we will now start our diff. And what it's going to do is it's going to show us the differences between those two files. I can see that there was a script step right here. This says a step was added. I've got the to-do change right there. I've got some reordering. Basically, it's looking at, on a line-by-line basis across the DDRs, all of the differences between them, and then the ability to actually drill down through these. Once I've got the information here of what I want to know about that's different, let's say in this one right here, I want to know, okay, the script step was deleted, I'm able to actually go over here and not use just this one window, but create another window as well. You can have as many DDRs open that you want. So this is my one DDR that I might be working on. I can just create a new browser, point to the original, create another new browser, and point to the modified version. And of course, because these two windows can be open right here, and it really works when you have multiple layouts, I can actually look at the differences. So this is going to tell me the differences in terms of the overall, greater perspective view. But then if I want to drill down to why something was deleted or how many references it had, let's take, for example, this script right here called changelog. All I have to do is go over here, go to scripts, type in changelog, double click, it drills down for me. It's always easier to search than it is to hunt and peck. Remember that. If you want to search, just click on the actual main category, search for it, then double click it to load it. I can see how many other references to the script there were, how many calls to, or how it was called by scripts, how many other scripts called it. I can actually find out what was broken in terms of whether I broke something when I deleted it or not. So of course, we're going to have some of our standard things that you're used to if you've used another development tool or another analysis tool. Those are going to be all of these items down here under slow queries. So all of these slow queries, basically what they mean is if you've got a very large DDR, I'm going to have to walk across the whole of the DDR looking for specific items. This is different in the sense of, hey, I just want to load privilege sets, and out of the DDR, just pull those privileges up and then let me look at what those privilege sets have to say. So it mentions that these are going to be slower queries, but again, remember they're going to be cached. So as we zoom out here and take off my highlight, our unreferenced objects, where we can look at our fields that are unreferenced, our layouts, custom functions, etc. These are all of your orphans that allow you to basically delete them if you want to safely because they don't have anything relying on or using them. Broken references, we've got unknowns, field missing, empty layout references, everything that you're used to seeing that FileMaker is now also highlighting within scripts when you're within your script and you actually want to see any of the script errors. Table missing, function missing. These are all the things you see in a much more aging FileMaker solution. And then layout objects. This is going to be very flat and slow. But remember everything that you have access to with regards to this information. Look at how much information there is as I scroll over to the side. There is so much information, whether it uses evaluate, whether it uses execute SQL. This is a tool that is going to allow you to break down a solution and find out where is it performing slow. If you find out that one particular custom function is performing slow, and it's because it's using a complex execute SQL and you want to switch to using a FileMaker table occurrence and using go-to related record because you think that's going to be faster to load your data, you're going to be able to find all of the references and all of the information that is used within your solution in order to basically re-engineer some of the slower things that are happening in your FileMaker solution. All right. So aside from the fact that FMPerception is going to be blazing fast at loading your DDR and allowing you to answer most any question about the whole meta structure of your solution, there are some other things that it provides that are just icing on the cake. Things that you're just like, wow, this is why this tool is worth the price that it is. The fact that anything that you're looking at, your DDR is actual information about what you've coded into a FileMaker solution. And as you already know, When you go from one FileMaker solution to another FileMaker solution, or I have a new solution that I've created right here, a blank file, you can copy and paste a lot of different elements because that's on the clipboard. Well, thanks to FMPerception, you can also take it directly from the DDR. So say, for example, I have a script here. Let's say it's the evaluate code script. And I can, of course, copy this, which I just did, to the clipboard, go over to my solution, open up the defined scripts, and then paste that script in there. Well, you can do the same thing with FMPerception on pretty much any of the same objects that you can copy and paste from FileMaker. Actually, when I pasted that, look at what actually happened right here. It wants the developer script as well, or the developer custom function. Well, if I go over to the custom functions and I have the list down here at the bottom, if I filter that by looking at developer, if it's something I needed to get to, I can actually right-click on this, and what we're going to see is we're going to see two different options, copy for FileMaker and copy XML text. Now, the XML text won't do you a whole lot of good when you're dealing within FileMaker. You're basically going to want to choose copy for FileMaker. But if you want to see what's in the XML text, or if you're a super advanced developer and you like to modify things such as, let's say, the hidden CSS, you're able to copy that text and paste it into a text editing application and edit that internal behind the scenes CSS if you want. But in this case, I'm just going to copy to FileMaker, go over to my solution, bring up my custom functions, and just paste. There's my developer custom function. Let's go ahead and open up that scripts that we have right here. Let's get rid of that evaluate code. And what's on the clipboard is the developer. So let's go over to my scripts flat, and let's actually type in evaluate. There it is right there. I'll right click and copy for FileMaker, go over to my script workspace and just paste it. And there I got developer, but again, I got some of my dependencies did not actually come through because I can see all of those different stars. In fact, if I wanted to find out within my solution anything that didn't paste correctly, all I'd have to do is export from this file and do a search for anywhere where I see that /star. I could just go in and use the text search feature of FMPerception. It really is that quick, that powerful, and that useful of a tool. So the last thing that I'm going to leave you with is that FMPerception, its default view, is not the only view that you have access to. If you go up to FMPerception and you take a look at the preferences, what you're going to have is just a small subset of preferences. You've got the ability to flag certain items. That's items that will show up within this area right here, within the results area. When you make a selection, evaluate shows up as something that you can sort by. Execute SQL is something that you can sort by. Here we've got something that is the execute SQL. You can specify these specifically what you want to look for and make them into sortable columns. So that's pretty nice. But when it comes to the view of how you deal with things, there is a browser style up here, which you can choose to view by a column style, which is the browser section up here, or an outline style. So this is just the second of your two in terms of options. It's not going to save it for this current window because it applies on a window-by-window basis, but if we create a new view and take a look at one of our views, this is your alternative view to the column browser. So if you like to look at things in more of a hierarchy where you can actually expand things and take a look at your tables, you've got the two different options. You've got the outline view right here on the side, or you've got the column browser right here. And that's just a matter of a preference that you can set in terms of how you like to look at things. Remember, you can always tab around in the solution too. A lot of the times I find myself clicking, but sometimes I'll switch to the fact that I like to actually use arrows. And so I'm using an arrow key right now. And I can go up to the scripts, and as soon as I'm on the scripts, I can arrow over and then go down to a certain point. But of course, if I want to be able to search the scripts, I can use the tab key. And what tab will do is it will move through the interface. So I can see right there, if I clear off eval, I can actually go back up the hierarchy by doing a shift tab, which now puts me back to go look at my layouts. I can now look at my layouts flat, and if I had a lot of them, I could hit tab and just be able to sort these really quickly English. If I tab again, I'm now in the bottom area right here, and I can arrow, and if I hit the enter key or space, I'm hoping that they'll actually set this up. I could double click right here to focus on this item, but hopefully they'll add in the feature where if I'm tabbing around, I just hit the enter key with anything selected here in the bottom, and it simply jumps me up to that selection within the browser that I'm using, regardless of whether I'm on the outline view or on the browser view. Any other further information I can simply access within the details. I can copy from this section. I can do all kinds of things with this super powerful tool. Okay, and to wrap things up, this is the last thing that I'm going to show you just before I wind this video down. Let's zoom in here. This is the code that I use in conjunction with the MBS plugin in order to actually basically just copy and paste a button directly into any FileMaker solution and be able to generate the DDR right off the bat. Optionally hold down the Alt key. Don't worry about the fact that you're going to copy this. This is not a valid registration code. I actually changed the numbers, but it's the whole of the code that you're actually interested in. I will paste this onto the video article so that you're able to copy it. Basically, I optionally use the get timestamp. I determine whether I'm going to use the timestamp of whether or not the Option key is or Alt key is held down with the caps lock as well. The Alt key alone would be 8, with the caps lock would be 10. I'm going to register the MBS plugin in case that's the only place the MBS plugin is used in the whole of the solution. And I'm going to turn that into a Boolean based on whether or not the result is okay. If it is okay, then we're going to basically be running the database design report. Otherwise, we're not. We are going to determine on the desktop whether a folder exists or not. I'm choosing to put everything within a containing folder called DDR. I'm using the name of the folder, or a subfolder, from the name of the file, and I'm passing that through filtering it based on the alphanumeric string right here. If the timestamp is going to be used, because a modifier key is held down, then I'm formatting that into the proper format right there. If the folder does not exist, then what I'm going to use is the MBS plugin again in order to create the folder and make that right there. Again, a lot of this was adapted from the code that Todd provides on the FMPerception tool, our website. I just wanted to be able to optionally use a key to apply the timestamp or not apply the timestamp. I didn't want it within a script. I wanted it directly on the button so that I can just copy and paste one actual object. And down here at the bottom is our result. If the MBS plugin is successfully registered, you do have to have a valid MBS registration code, then it's going to use the function fm run database design report at the proper target folder. Otherwise, it's going to tell you that the MBS plugin is not registered, putting it all into a global variable running off of a single set variable step. So we've got a single step on the generate DDR. I can now copy and paste this into any other FileMaker file, generate that DDR extremely quickly, and be able to use FMPerception so fast that it really does, as they say on the website, become part of your regular workflow. You can so easily export, refresh, search, ask your question, and get an answer so quickly that this tool is 100% worth every penny that you pay for it. So I hope as a course of watching this video, you've been able to get a better idea of what you can do with FileMaker, how you can actually understand more about your FileMaker solution, and my compliments to the developers of the FMPerception tool. It is a very valuable tool for those of us that are choosing to spend our time developing with FileMaker Pro. As always, I'd like to wish you much luck, and until next time, happy FileMaking.
We hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial, and we'd like to say thank you for your subscription and your support. If you're not already a subscriber, head on over to www.filemakermagazine.com/subscribe for more information about the benefits of joining.